that maybe aren't happy with their third quarterback. And that's what, goes on with all the third stringers around the league. They're trying to flash and get on tape for other teams that maybe need help at their particular position. So when they're on the street, you got to knock down the 75 on August 26th, and then it goes all the way down to 53 on August 30th. So, there's going to be a lot of players on the street in basically less than 2 weeks. And those guys are all trying to fight for jobs, if not with the Cleveland Browns, for somebody else.
Oh, I agree with you. We talk about that. You got to get that stuff on tape. There's some guys that I think there's a lot of guys that are playing for jobs, but there's some guys that really have to come out here. Forget the marquee stuff. We're talking about quarterbacks and stuff. I think that, on the offensive line for the Browns, I think Garrett Gilkey, I think Reed Fragel, both of those guys, and I like Fragel, by the way. He intrigues me a lot, but I think both of those guys have got to show up some way, somehow, to keep themselves in the backup competition for the offensive line because they're bubble guys. Wide receivers, and I'll tell you what, I think the Browns' final wide receiver core isn't even on the roster yet because I fully expect them to find one or two guys when, like you said, when all of these teams have to cut down. I think the Browns are going to dig out for some wide receivers because they still haven't really gotten what they wanted out of a lot of these guys. But Charles Johnson, Anthony Armstrong, those guys, Willie Snead, those guys have got to take advantage here and separate because the ones that do stick on the roster for a week or two are going to have to deal with whoever the Browns dig up, like you said, who gets turned loose elsewhere, because I don't think the Browns are happy with who they've got making up that receiver core just yet.
Yeah, you're right. And, one of the sort of the law of unintended consequences aspect of the new collective bargaining agreement, the players fought so hard and the veteran players, to knock down those two-a-days, no more, two-a-days. The padded practices are limited. And what that has done, the unintended part of it, is that, those college free agents have much less chance to show off in practice. Fewer repetitions. They're not able to get on tape nearly as much in practice sessions. So they have to flash now more than ever in the preseason games when they get their chances because it's largely their only chance. I always point to a guy I covered closely throughout my career, John Randall, who was, back when the draft was 12 rounds. 12 rounds, Jerry. Yeah. He wasn't drafted, and he ended up in the Hall of Fame. I don't know if he ever would have gotten a chance in this environment. I really don't, because it's so limited. It's so you think about guys who start on the fourth string and third string. You've been in practice, you've seen it. You see them get so little opportunity today because there's just not time. You have to utilize every repetition you have. So it becomes much more difficult for players like that. And you see a guy, obviously it's rare that any undrafted free agent makes it all the way to the Hall of Fame, but it has happened on more than one occasion. And now it's more difficult than ever for these kids to show what they have.
Oh, yeah, they get very limited opportunity. Like you said, there's a lot of guys who, there's a difference between being good enough to do it and getting the opportunity to you just need one person to figure that out, and then you get your shot. But it's not the easiest thing. Something we haven't talked about, and I want to mention this is one of the things everybody hates about camp and preseason, and it's one of the reasons people talk about cutting the games out, although I always say, and I get that, but if people tackle this bad while they play preseason games, imagine how bad they'd tackle if they didn't play any games at all. It would be week 8 before guys were making clean tackles. But the injuries, obviously everybody worries about those. Buster Screen, who's been really shining early on here in training camp, trying to hold off Pierre Desir and be that second cornerback. he busts up his finger. Brown's hoping not to have surgery with him, but he is at least going to be out the rest of the preseason, and hopefully they can have him here for week 1. But there's one guy, and you talk about with injury comes opportunity. There's going to be opportunities in the defensive backfield. The other position, and this one hurts, man, because I think he was primed for a big season, is Des Bryant, because last year, I mean, he led the Browns in harassing the quarterback. He's got the wrist injury. Brown's very concerned that he may need surgery as well. So both of those two there could go a long way towards shaking up what was looking like a formidable defense.
Yeah, and that's the biggest concern for any coach, is to get through the preseason healthy. I mean, you never want to lose a player, but you can at least stomach it more when it happens in an environment that counts. So you never, I mean, it hurts just as much if you lose a guy in the first game for the entire season, but still, it stings a little bit less because you know you're fighting for something. And I think more than ever, same thing. It kind of piggybacks on that last discussion we had about, you know, undrafted guys not getting chances. Same thing with the new CBA. I think it's changed everything. It's changed so many things people don't think about. You talked about tackling. There's so little hitting in training camps around the NFL now, and the main reason why is coaches don't feel they should. It's a scenario for them. It's a risk-reward type of thing, and there's so little practice time to begin with, and the fact that you don't have two-a-days, the mentality has shifted. Let's just try to get out of this thing as healthy as possible. And one of the aspects of that is to not have tackling in training camp. And basically it's just thuds throughout the NFL. And maybe that's only 2 times a week. So when you see guys struggle to wrap up in the preseason or even early in the regular season, it makes a whole lot of sense because they're not tackling in the preseason by and large in training camp. You know, and it's just the mentality is it's better to get out of training camp as healthy as possible than risk having one of your key cogs especially get hurt.
Absolutely, you know, and I mean, again, and here, a lot of people, I mean, I'll tell you, hoping for the best here with Des Bryant, that could hurt, but that's why a lot of people make that argument. But I'm with you, and I think you hear me on that. Could you imagine how atrocious the tackling would be if you had none of those before the season started? I mean, it would. You would notice that a lot more. All of a sudden, people would go, oh, so that's one of the things. Because you're right, just because of the lack of all of that stuff, man. But injuries are the counterpoint to all of that. I saw something here where they were there's some more conversation, and I'm sure until they find a balance, there will be, of cutting out the preseason and extending the season on the back end, or expanding the postseason, as we've heard them talk about and stuff like that. I still think, I mean, you have to have some kind of a preseason, if for nothing else. You really need to have it, period, for the players. I mean, I hate to say this, but the NFL has lasted all of these years with all of their Hall of Fame players going through two-a-days and preseasons and everything else, and they still made it all the way to the Hall of Fame. So I swear these players can do it. They can take the whooping and keep on going. But
they can do it. But you know, society has shifted. You know, guys would obviously play with concussions and play with injuries, and we've changed. We've morphed as a society, and
we're
soft, people are going to take away your helmet.
We're soft, John.
Yeah.
We've gone soft as a world. What has happened to us, man?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, you know, whether you like it or not, it's fact. And the bottom line is, you know, it is a different time, and you're not going to see that anymore. You're not going to see Ronnie Lott rip off the tip of his finger to go back in a football game. It's just not going to happen. And some people say that's good, and some people say it's bad. I understand both sides of the coin. It's probably not a good idea to do what Ronnie Lott did, but at the same time, you certainly respected him for it and said, "Wow, that's a tough guy." And you know, that's part of football. It's a violent sport by nature, and as much as you try to legislate the physicality out of it, you know, sometimes I think it's worse. I talked about that law of unintended consequences. You know, when you go through, you know, training camp and you're not hitting, and all of a sudden you're expected on week 1 to go 100 miles an hour, in blast, I think that can hurt you. I really do. I think there's something to building up to contact. There's something about, going through those two-a-days and hitting, and you built up this tolerance, and I think that's missing. I really do.
Oh, I agree with you 150%. You definitely, whether I do, I'm a pro wrestler. I've played football. When you take that pounding on a daily basis, all of a sudden, the daily pounding is nothing. It's the extreme pounding that hurts now, because the day-to-day stuff becomes day-to-day. You get used to it. You grow your pain tolerance. You grow your ability to take that, And I agree. That's all part of it, man. Just like tackling in the preseason. But so anyways, it is what it is. But I do believe that eventually they'll get it cut down to probably 2 games would be the happy medium. There has to be something for the guys that we're talking about that aren't named Manziel and Hoyer. There's got to be a place for them to earn a spot on the team, like you mentioned earlier. So you cannot completely wipe out the preseason. You just can't do it.
No, and you need practice. And my mentality is, though, you could scale it back. One of the things that I think is just egregious and people don't talk enough about is the fact that most NFL teams bundle the preseason games into the regular season games with their season ticket packages. So in essence, they're penalizing their most loyal fans because, you have to pay full price for these preseason games. And we've seen it this year better than any other year with all the flags and what they're trying to do in the preseason and call the game tighter with the incentive of it'll be cleaned up. The players will understand the game's going to be called differently. But you're still charging the fans to come in and see these games, which are often unwatchable. So I think there's a way to sort of like do it at training camp, have scrimmages with, take it to college stadiums, you see it around the league already where teams have scrimmages at live scrimmages, and you'll see for the Packers, you'll see 40, 50,000 people show up.
We had one.
And
yeah.
So I think there's a different way to do it and still get the same result. But at the end of the day, it's a monetary thing, and the NFL is not going to want to give up those gate receipts that they get for preseason games, which, as I said, they charge the same as they do for regular season games.
And you have to buy them when you get your season tickets. It's the best racket in the world, man.
That's a great word for it, because it's definitely a racket.
It's true. It's like, hey, we'll give you this great deal, but you have to take our clunker. You can get the Lexus, but you got to take that clunker with you when you go. We got to give you that one too, So they clear out the lot. It works. It's a win-win for everybody, except for sometimes for the fan that paid full price to see, some of the things that you see in the preseason. But it isn't, like you said, it's a necessary evil, and I'm sure, I don't know, it's a balance. They'll have to figure out a way to balance that lost income, as you said, with the safety and all that. We'll see. But anyways, here we go. Browns and the Redskins, and at least after this one, there should be no more questions 24 hours from now about the starting quarterback of the Browns, hopefully, and then they can get forward with getting ready, because that's the other thing, too. Regardless of who it is, and I think the Browns know that. They've seen it. It becomes divisive. It just becomes too much attention to the coaching staff. Like this, Mike Pettin likes to joke about 90% of the questions will go away after tomorrow, and that's true, because all of a sudden they will have to fight. Man, Terry Francona, the Indians manager, is getting ready for the game yesterday, and somebody asked him who he thought should win the Browns quarterback job. I'm like, now that's pathetic. The dude's in a pennant race, getting ready for a game, and you're asking him who should quarterback the Browns. Man, come on. But that's the level it's at. So at least the Browns as a team can get that behind them, and whoever it is, they can start getting that guy and the rest of the starters ready starting next week.
Yeah, and I'll never say never, but as I said, if the tea leaves are certainly pointing towards Hoyer, and if by some chance, by some miracle, it changes by tomorrow, I think you have to look toward the owner and the general manager, because I believe then it's taken out of the coach's hand.
And that's very true. The next 24 to 48 hours will be very interesting for the future, the present and the future of the Cleveland Browns. John McMullen from the Sports Network, thank you so much for being here with us. We We're going to have a hell of a lot to talk about next week when we talk, because the third week will be in the books. We'll get a look at all of these teams heading into what, will be the dress rehearsal game coming out of it, and we'll know who's starting at quarterback for the Browns. So should be a fun week next week as we roll towards the opening day.
All right, looking forward to it. Thanks, buddy.
My man, John McMullen from the Sports Network. You guys can tweet with him at JF McMullen. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Dan Wismar on the other side of the break. We'll talk